January 12, 2022. Aneka, quick question. Do you know what really happened in Chernobyl? Is there something curious there? Secrets to be revealed there?
Yes, it's complicated, but it is part of the terraforming agenda. The incident was provoked, also to destroy an energy node. Nuclear plants are built on ley lines, and to attack with radiation the Ukrainian and southern Russian population, because they were awakening a lot, as there is a lot of ET material in their genetics. Also, to attack with radiation the remnants of an ancient Tibetan base in Crimea near Yalta. It is still there underground, with its pyramid and all, but it is a militarized zone. It connects underground with Mount Busiji, among other places.
Did they manage to destroy the energy node? What are the consequences for Gaia?
Many consequences. It is shutting down a chakra, limiting the flow to avoid an awakening or raising the frequency. The same goes for Fukushima. It keeps the Earth frequency of the matrix in general low. Part of the agendas, and they are all connected, even with the vaccines.
But terraforming, what agenda is that?
The deterioration of the Earth, so that it is no longer compatible with humans as we know them today, and is more compatible with lower astral beings, those who constantly try to enter what could be called the physical world, always looking for how. Amalgamate the life frequency of the average human with that of the regressive egregor entities. This has been seen for centuries with the so-called diabolical possessions, where an egregor entity attempts to operate or function in the so-called physical world using an organic portal that is a person with the same frequency, or compatible, or weak that can be invaded.
Wow, fascinating. And what other actions are implemented in this program to terraform the planet?
Increase radiation in general, electromagnetic with a 4G and 5G, and with all the electromagnetic soup you know, plus the dispersion of ionizing radiation materials from nuclear plants. Let me remind you that they are not for producing electrical energy. They consume it. They do not produce it. It just looks this way. They have an energy recirculation node to make the technicians believe that they produce electrical energy. Their function is to control the frequency of the Earth nodes as an attempt to lower your spiritual development. Attempt to control the Earth. That's why they're placed on ley lines. They are Terra transformer plants. They produce radiation in low frequencies and are of scalar consequences. That is to say that they transcend densities as they are known by humans. They transcend them because there are no densities.
They have an energy recirculation node. What is that? Can you expand a little more on that? Thank you.
That is to say that a nuclear plant will receive power from the country's electrical grid, and then the surplus is passed through its systems and back to the grid. That which goes back is what is considered as what the nuclear plant produces. It does not produce it. It does not produce anything. It only returns what it does not need. And the humans go with a pretense that they produce energy. And even the nuclear technicians believe it. The technical managers with rank in each plant know that they cause energy deficit. They do not produce anything, but they keep quiet about it because it is not politically correct for the population to know. Because they are Terra transformer plants. They are not electric power plants. A healthy nuclear plant spills ionizing radioactive material to its surroundings. This is by design. That is what it is for. It is not a mistake, as others say. Fukushima the same. Just that healthy operating nuclear plants release ionizing materials in a gradual way, controlled by them, by design, and they release Chernobyl and Fukushima with an explosion by intentional sabotage. I know very well they explain why it was an accident, but again, they don't tell you the truth. And it is very convenient because they say that there's a lot of radiation, and there is there, and with that, they keep the investigators away.
That's why there are so many UFO sightings near nuclear power plants. Because they are energy nodes?
Because they observe and study them, not because they take energy from them. No UFO needs energy neither from the sun, nor from power grids, nor from thunderstorms, nor from water or volcanoes. That is a human lie, a UFO theory without knowledge. All interstellar races use zero-point energy in one way or another.
So the radiation that was dispersed in the area caused damage to the population. I remember when that happened. We had to drink a yellow liquid in small quantity at school as some kind of treatment against it. That was when I was a child growing up in Poland.
The damage to the population was and still is horrible. And it is an attack on the population, causing fear, death, and suffering, especially to the Ukrainian people who are getting out of control energetically and spiritually speaking.
Do you know what that yellow liquid was that we drank?
Special enriched iodine.
And did it really help with anything?
Yes, it helps, especially for the thyroid, which is the organ that receives the most negative impact from ionizing radiation. And it also absorbs some of the radiation from the cells.
Okay, thank goodness then. I thought it was just another excuse to put in more poison into people. And did that work for them in Ukraine? Have the citizens regressed in their awakening?
Yes, the awakening they had in 1986 is not so obvious. It is subtle, but they know it by activation of terrestrial nodes. They had to turn that one off.
I understand. Fascinating. So, all nuclear plants have this function?
All or almost all of them of the civilian use. The ones for military use do produce energy, but on a small scale, like to power an aircraft carrier or a submarine.
You said it is subtle, but they know it by activation of terrestrial nodes. How?
The Earth is a living organism. Its chakras, or energy nodes that run through the ley lines are activated as it receives more energy from the Earth system itself. Some turn off, others turn on, as with any living conscious organism. This node was activating a lot. It had to be stopped to prevent the Earth from ascending, so to speak.
Okay. And do you know who exactly caused this explosion there?
Yes. Where did the order come from?
I can't say names because I don't have them, but it did come from the Nuclear Regulation Department of the UN, and from there, from the Cabal.
Okay. And one thing. Now this plant is closed, so they blew it up and shut it down? It's no longer of use to them, but it's still on the node.
Chernobyl, yes, and Pripyat, the nearby town, is still abandoned and contaminated. It still controls the node as a point of constant nuclear contamination.
But the node is still working, I guess.
Shut down, damaged.
The explosion shut it down?
The nuclear contamination lowered its energy frequency.
But it will come back on eventually?
In a long time. They say 50,000 years. Average of the strontium decay present there.
And why aren't they exploding other nodes on Earth?
They are controlling them with nuclear plants. No need to explode them. Only if the energy of the place rises too high, they would explode them, as with Chernobyl and Fukushima.
All these affected animals.
There are mutations and monsters there.
That's why they will always depend on nuclear energy. It serves them as a perfect excuse. Something that, if free and clean energy was released, they would not be able to do.
That's right, Robert. Nuclear energy is another lie, only considering risk versus product. They're not worth it, but they prefer them over traditional forms like coal, which they do not want anymore because it connects with the carbon agenda and global warming or climate change and all that stuff about CO2 and reducing your carbon footprint and all those lies.
Same as oil.
Yes, oil is a highly renewable fuel.
Yeah, it's curious. They have the climate change agendas and they keep building more nuclear power plants.
Those are the ones that really do harm, but the population doesn't see that, and they believe the carbon footprint.
They should look at Chernobyl and Fukushima, but they say they are safe.
They are not.
Are there some ET races that are in charge of cleaning up some of the Chernobyl contamination? I think it was Andromedans who were cleaning up after the Fukushima, right?
Yes, there are Andromedan and Federation ships cleaning up by imposing specific anti-radiation frequencies, using methods such as imposing oppositely charged radiation particles, using tractor beam technology by particle manifestation, as already explained in one of the videos. But I feel they should do more, because they could.
And why don't they?
Maybe so it wouldn't be so obvious.
I don't know. Maybe they think that's enough. Yes, it could be, because we see that the damage to the terrestrial biology would be even more serious if there had been no intervention. If you want, this is a plus for the Federation, but you must remember that nuclear factor has always been a point of direct intervention on their part. as with the missiles and nuclear silos that the Federation constantly has to deactivate to remind the humans who has the real control over the decision to use nuclear bombs. However, the Cabal is crafty and has made nuclear bombs in small sizes like backpacks, or in small missiles, or even had nuclear artillery before.
Yes, the Federation will never tolerate the destruction of the planet.
It won't. But of humanity, it will. That's the problem.
Another day.
They talk about Bill Gates. It seems that he has invested in nuclear power plants.
There are shady things going on in the sense that nuclear energy is not what they tell you. Just looking at nuclear theory, whether it's for reactors or for bombs, you can tell that something doesn't fit. What I mean is that it goes against the mechanics of manifestation. I began to think this when I contrasted my information, which I still do not share, about Tartaria. That is, from the science that we manage, there are no such nuclear violent reactions, only a degradation of heat resulting in ionizing radiation. But they don't go into critical mass. I am still investigating the mathematics, but it contradicts our science. So what I have as data is that the nuclear detonations that there have been, it appears to be only high-power chemical detonations. And the shots of nuclear detonations may be altered or may not have a radiation rate as people are told. There may also be a percentage of dirty bombs, meaning that a conventional large detonation scatters radiation with the intention of fouling an area, and not because that same material is the one that reaches critical mass. Now, another thing, by signal frequencies detected in records for decades, they indicate that large detonations of major nuclear bombs of the family of hydrogen bombs are really energy weapons. That later they say they are nuclear to instill fear into people and to misinform about the true nature of the detonation. In other words, with energy weapons technology, it is useless and obsolete to try to use nuclear weapons. An energy weapon has the capacity to destroy planets. That is, it exceeds the capabilities of a nuclear. It also fits in that atomic power plants are not generating electricity, are only rebounding as surplus, and are themselves draining power from the grid, because the real purpose is to terraform the Earth. That is why they are on ley lines, and they use uranium radiation as a method of frequency control, because they are very low, to lower the energy of the planet and disperse it along the ley lines.
Are those energy weapons on Earth?
Yes, and governments have them. Simple example of this are the energy weapon systems on ships and airplanes. It's the same thing, but concentrated in higher volume capacity, volts, watts, Teslas, whatever the measurement is. Another day. Nuclear power plants do not produce anything. They consume. And yes, I accept that sometimes they return to the grid an electrical volume. And so even the technicians themselves will say that they work there and that yes, it is produced. But they don't understand the whole system. That's at their level. They can be seen as a huge capacitor. They accumulate energy and use it for geotransformation. They discharge the surplus, and as they have been accumulating, it seems that they supply a lot of energy. But it is the discharge of the capacitor. And it is also believed that the cooling towers are the ones that do the terraforming. It will be so on a small scale, if anything. If they are cooling systems, they are like large car radiators, basically. The way nuclear power plants terraform the Earth is by imposing very low frequencies of radioactive isotopes, especially uranium-238, which degrades into plutonium of military use. Another use for nuclear power plants is to supply processed material for weapons. Imposition of low frequencies by ionizing radioactive materials over energetic nodes of the Earth, using the transmission of vibrational energy through the system of the Earth itself, as all nodes are connected. They are frequency modulators, voltage regulators filled with capacitors to regulate the 3D frequency.
It's these, right?
Cooling towers, yes. The radiation heats the water that turns into steam, that moves turbines to generate electricity, and then that steam and water is cooled, passing through those towers to be recirculated again. So looking at a nuclear electric plant, you don't see anything unusual. It just generates electricity as it appears to the naked eye. But that is the excuse or camouflage. The production is little, and the system is very complicated, recirculating highly radioactive materials in the water that cools the system by transmission of materials or tunnel effect, lowering the frequency of the water. By tunnel effect, I mean the principle that moves an interferometer. The water passes through without touching the radioactive material, cooling the core. But low-frequency properties permeate the water, which then passes through the towers and the rest of the system, lowering the existential frequency of the area. And as they are over ley line nodes, they lower the frequency of the whole Earth. Water can be programmed. This is already known. They use this. They exploit this principle among others. But the water is contaminated, and then it escapes, even if it is as steam on top of these cooling towers. The water changes from H2O to H100O120, or with higher numbers, becoming basically heavy water. Exact formula to represent heavy water, D2O. The D stands for deuterium oxide.
Thanks. But is that formula in the periodic table, or is that new, deuterium oxide? I have never heard of it.
It is not in the periodic table because it is a compound, and only elements appear in the table. It is a formula. The famous deuterium bomb that the Nazis were trying to produce was based on heavy water. It is the same thing. When elements are combined in specific ways, they are given other names, but it is still the same. Analyzing this, you can see that my formula H100O120 is not so wrong. It just means a high number of neutrons and protons in the same points where there would be the ones that form water, just a lot of them. Since the numbers after hydrogen H and oxygen O are random and not exact in my formula, just meaning many. And in the official formula, they are summed up with the letter D for deuterium oxide. Random because there isn't just one deuterium oxide or heavy water, but it is a concentration gradient. This is important because there is heavy water of various degrees of density concentration, in which, as the number of neutrons and protons increases, it increases in mass density and therefore acquires progressively more qualities of ionizing radioactive material. It is not like water, which is H2O and that's it. However, neither that. Because if you combine water in this way, H1O, which is equivalent to one atom of hydrogen combined with one atom of oxygen, you have a 1-to-1 ratio, where the hydrogen is violently oxidized, annihilating both molecules, resulting in a tremendous explosion. Liquid-type rocket fuel. The solid one based on aluminium oxide would be missing, and it is water only. Although I should clarify that in that GIF image, the propellants are using aluminium trioxide and not hydrogen and oxygen. The propellants are solid fuel in that rocket. In this one, they are liquid fuel, oxygen and hydrogen. Not all rockets work the same way. Pressurized hydrogen is maintained in liquid form in one tank and liquid oxygen in another. It goes through the rocket engines where they combine in different ratios as needed, but basically in a 1-to-1 or close to 1-to-1 ratio, where it passes from liquid to pressurized gas, and both elements explode in the exhaust nozzles, which compresses them backwards, forcing the hot gases on ignition in one direction, causing the action-reaction effect. In the case of liquid fuel, yes, the pressure and power of the engines is controlled, as well as when they come on and shut down. In the case of solid fuel rockets, such as those with reusable propellants, like those in the first GIF above, or like those used on the space shuttle, once ignited, the aluminium trioxide cannot be shut down in any way until that fuel is exhausted. Nor can the power output be modulated. It gives all until it runs out. Here you can see the simplified components of a liquid fuel rocket, where the fuel is the pressurized liquid hydrogen and the oxidizer is the liquid oxygen.
Luckily, it's not manned.
It's exactly the same in the manned ones. That one looks like a Nazi V2, by the way. And if you combine the water in this way, H2O2, you will have hydrogen peroxide. Literal translation, oxygenated water. Healing material. And all of that is still water. In the picture above, they are using ethanol as fuel. They are variants, attempts to lower the dangerousness of the system, but at the cost of net thrust per pound of dead weight of the rocket.
Safer but slower?
And less powerful, with less payload capacity. Note that they combined alcohol with water to lower its volatility. However, already in ignition, the water separates into hydrogen and oxygen by the high temperatures, which means that the simple water itself with which they diluted the ethanol, alcohol, becomes combustible, increasing the power safely. Nice low-tech trick. But it's still the same thing, I am telling you, H1O. This is very outdated. As soon as you start playing with high-power frequency-modulated electromagnetic energy fields, then rockets become obsolete in the face of a gravity engine, which then evolves to an even more advanced plasma jet.
Okay, thanks. We've come this far talking about nuclear power plant refrigerators.
Yes, if we keep connecting the topics, we end up with spacecraft engines, and then navigation, and then we end up on the moons of Rigel 4.